that is energy. Okay, energy flow in an ecosystem. So generally, we already know that the energy, it is the capacity. And so what energy means? It is the capacity to do work. So generally, the biological activities which require consumption of energy, so which ultimately comes from the sun. The main source of energy in an ecosystem is the solar energy. So except for the deep sea hydrothermal ecosystem, the sun is the only source of energy for all types of ecosystems on the earth. So of this, the total incident solar radiation, that is less than, that is photosynthetically active radiation. So generally solar energy of sun. So during the, what happens here, the solar energy of the sun is transformed into the chemical energy by the process of photosynthesis. So here plants absorb the solar energy and they convert into the food or organic matter. So then it is stored in plant tissues and then transformed into the mechanical and heat form of the energy during the metabolic activity. So here the producer, that is the plants, they absorb the solar energy and they convert the solar energy into here ATP, adenosine triphosphate, by the process of photosynthesis, and it is stored in the plant tissues and some of the amount of energy is released during the metabolic activities. So what are the components of energy flow in an ecosystem means first one is the main source, that is the sun. So the energy used for all plant life processes which is derived from the solar radiations, and all animals are further dependent on these plants. So the main producers are the plants. So they synthesize the food materials and it is again transferred to the other organism, that is the animals. So about 34% of the sunlight reaching the earth atmosphere, which is reflected back by clouds and dust, and 10% is held by the ozone layer and water vapor and other atmospheric gases. So only 56% is reaches the earth's surface, of which only, that is 2 to 10% is used by the plants and the remaining is absorbed as a heat by water or ground. So here the total, the amount of energy which is released by the sun, only 2 to 10% only absorbed by the plants, and remaining energy, that is solar energy, which is some amount is absorbed by the atmospheric layers, and also some is absorbed by the ozone layer and some is absorbed by the water and ground. So only 2 to 10% only absorbed by the plants. Out of 100%, so only 2% only, 2 to 10% only it is utilized by the plants to synthesize the food materials. So next one is the producers. So okay, so produces the green plants in the ecosystem. That is term, it is called as a producers. Ecosystem terminology, they are called as the producers. So in a terrestrial ecosystem, the major producers are the herbaceous and woody plants. Likewise, the primary producers in the aquatic ecosystem are various species like phytoplanktons, algae, and higher plants. So producers, that is the first one. That is they play main role. That is they only synthesizing the food materials by absorbing the solar energy. Second one is the consumers. So all animals which dependent on plants are the consumers. They may be directly or indirectly for their food needs. So they are called as the consumers. Hence they are called the consumers are heterotrophs. Another one is the decomposers, that is the heterotrophic organisms, mainly fungi and bacteria, which meet their energy and nutrient requirements by degrading the dead organic matter, and detritus are called the decomposers. So they are also known as the saprotrophs. We already discussed this in biotic components. Okay, so here the plants capture only 2 to 10% of the photosynthetically active radiation, and this small amount of energy which sustains the entire living world. Okay, so the plants, they produce the food materials and it is utilized by all living organisms. So it is very important to know that how solar energy, which is captured by the plants and flow through different organisms of the ecosystem. So this can be shown by the following schematic diagram, that is the sun. that is radiant energy. So it is absorbed by the producers. From the producers, so they undergo, they convert this into chemical energy, solar energy into chemical energy. That is, they produce the food material, carbohydrates. So here from the producers to consumers, so here the some amount is absorbed by these consumers, and some of the amount of energy is released in the form of heat. And from the producers to decomposers also chemical energy is transferred. So while transferring the energy from these producers to consumers or decomposers, so some of the amount of energy is released in the form of heat energy here also from during. So like that, here the transfer of energy will takes place from the solar energy to producers, from the producers to the consumers and decomposers. So here another one is, so some important points. So an ecosystem which consists of all the organisms living in a community, as well as all the abiotic factors with which they interact. So we already, that is the interaction between living organisms with its surroundings. Okay. So the dynamic of an ecosystem which involves the two processes, that is the energy flow and chemical cycling. Okay. So these are the two main processes which are done by this ecosystem, that is the energy flow and also the chemical cycling. So energy, it is the capacity to do work, and energy exists in two forms, that is the potential energy and kinetic energy. So potential energy is the energy at rest, that is stored energy. It is called as the potential energy, and kinetic energy, it is stored free energy. For the source of energy required by all the living organisms is the chemical energy of their food. So chemical energy, which is obtained by the conversion of this radiant energy of the sun. So in any ecosystem, there should be a unidirectional flow of energy. So generally energy flow, it is unidirectional. That is, it will not again reach. So the primary source of energy in all ecosystems is the sun, and approximately 57% of the sun energy is absorbed in the atmosphere and scattered in the space, and some 35% is spent to heat water and land areas and to evaporate water, and approximately 8% of light energy which striking the plant surface, that is 10 to 15% is again reflected back, and 5% is transmitted, and 80 to 85% is absorbed. So an average only 2% of the total light energy which striking on the leaf is used in photosynthesis, and rest is transformed into heat energy. So here the movement of energy through the trophic levels of the food chain, it is called as the energy flow. So energy flow means it is a transfer of energy from one trophic level to the another trophic level. So this energy flow, which is based on two important laws of thermodynamics. So generally the energy flow which follows thermodynamic laws. Okay, so energy flow in an ecosystem, that is from the sun, radiant energy producers to consumers and decomposers. So in every transfer, that is some of the amount of energy is lost in the form of heat. So ecological energetics, which includes energy transformation which occurs within the ecosystem. So in ecological energetics, we consider quantity of energy system per unit area per unit time, and quantity of energy which is trapped by the green plants and converted to chemical form, that is photosynthesis. And another one is the quantity and path of energy flow from the green plants to the organisms of different trophic levels over a period of time in a known area. So energy flow from the producers to the consumers. So these all comes under the ecological energetics. So first one is the quantity of energy which is reaching the ecosystem per unit area per unit time. Second one is the quantity of energy which is trapped by the producers, that is the green plants, and it is converted to chemical form. Third one is the quantity and path of energy flow from green plants to the organisms of different trophic levels. So we already discussed that. So that is energy transformation in an ecosystem can be explained by the two which follows the laws of thermodynamics. Okay. So ecosystem follows the first law of thermodynamics, that is, which states that first law of thermodynamics is the energy may be transformed from one form to another but it can neither be created nor be destroyed. So generally that is energy neither be created or nor destroyed, but it can be transformed from one form to another. So this is the first law of thermodynamics. So this is also true in case of the ecosystem. So when an organism dies, its energy is not destroyed, but it is dissipated in the surrounding through the decomposers. Okay, next one. Second law, that is further ecosystem is not exempted from the second law also, that is second law of thermodynamics, which states that process involves energy transformation does not occur spontaneously unless there is a degradation of energy from a non-random to the random form. That is, while transforming the amount of energy, some of the amount of energy is released. Okay, so the energy in living organisms is in non-random form. That is in the form of chemical bonds of biomolecules. But when their decomposition occurs, the non-random energy is converted into random form by the decomposers to simple forms. So it follows two laws. So interconnection among the organisms. So all the organisms and ecosystem are connected in a very intricate manner, and energy flow occurs through these interconnections. So these interconnections can be depicted by the food chains to understand the basic connection between the organisms. So in reality, they are a lot more complexly interconnected, but here we are in simple form. So there are many types of food chains which are operating in the nature. So major one among them are grazing food chain and detritus food chain. So a simple grazing food chain is depicted here. So that is from the sun, that is produces in the presence of CO2 and water. So they convert the producer, say in the presence of CO2 and water, it can produce the carbohydrates, okay, sugars. So here from this producers to the primary consumers, and from the primary consumer to the secondary consumers, and from the secondary consumers to the tertiary consumers, and after at each level, so here the death and decay of these organisms will take place, and it is decomposed. So again, it reaches the it is observed by these decomposers, again by the producers. So another one is the 10% law. So generally energy flow in an ecosystem, which can be explained by this 10% law. So this law was introduced in context into the energy flow in an ecosystem by the Raymond Linderman. Okay. So another name, that is 10% law, it is also known as the Linderman's law. So according to this law, during the transfer of energy from organic food from one trophic level to the next, only 10% of the energy from the organic matter is stored as a flesh, and the remaining is lost during the transfer or broken down in respiration or lost to incomplete digestion by the higher trophic levels. So according to this 10% law, so every transfer of energy, only the organisms at each trophic level, only they get only 10% of the energy only, and the remaining amount is lost in the form of heat or other metabolic activities. So here, for example, here from the sun, that is 1000 joules of light energy is absorbed by these producers. So here the 10 joules of energy available as a food for producers. And here remaining 990 joules of energy is lost to the environment. Only here 10 joules of energy is absorbed by these producers. From this 10 joules of energy, that is herbivores, they absorb only 1 joule of energy is available to these herbivores, that is primary consumers. From this 1 joule of energy, here next carnivores, it get only 0.1 joule of energy only available as a food for these carnivores. So as a trophic level increasing from one trophic level to another, so the amount of energy is decreasing, and at each trophic level it gets only 10% only. So hence it is called as a 10% law. So when compared to the producers to the carnivores, so producers has more amount of energy compared to the carnivores. Okay. So the 10% law gives us a basic understanding on the cycling of the food chains, and further more this law shows the inefficiency of energy capture at each successive trophic level. So Here, a representation of this energy flow in an ecosystem, that is trophic level, that is organisms occupy a place in the natural surroundings or in a community according to their feeding relationship with other organisms. So based on the source of their nutrition or food, so these organisms occupy a specific place in the food chain, that is known as the trophic level. So a given organism may occupy more than one trophic level simultaneously. So organisms at each trophic level dependent on those at the lower trophic level for their energy demand. Standing crop, another term, that is the standing crop, means each trophic level has a certain mass of living material at a particular time. It is called as a standing crop. And it is measured as a biomass of the organism or their number in unit area. So pyramid of energy. So any calculation of energy content or biomass or number has to include all organisms at the trophic level. So this is the again that energy flow that is here. The amount of energy from the sun to producers. So as the trophic level increasing here, from the primary producers to the tertiary consumers, the amount of energy is decreasing from 10,000, 1,110 joules. So again here two models, energy flow model, that is single channel energy flow model and Y-shaped model of energy. So single model, that is the flow of energy which takes place in a unidirectional manner through a single channel of green plants to the herbivores and carnivores. So the energy which is passed to the next trophic level is never reverted back to the lower level. So this is single or unidirectional flow of energy. Y-shaped model, so it is also called as the double channel model. So here it is in nature, both grazing and detritus food chains which operate in the same ecosystem. So it explains the connection between the grazing and detritus food chain. So here when we observe this, so this is the detritus food chain, that is dead plant matter to plants. So here it takes place in two ways. Okay, so here the dead lion, so lion to here dead, so here dead deer. So here the energy here in first way, first direction, that is plant to deer, deer to lion. So here while in each state, that is if this organism it will die. So from this again it is the decomposes, that is the decomposes, and again it is released into the plants. So here the dead plant matter. So like that. So again it reaching. So here the Y-shaped model of energy flow. So it is also known as a double channel model. So in here both the grazing. So this one comes under the grazing food chain and this comes under the detritus food chain. So it explains the connection between the grazing and detritus food chain. So how they are relating. So here in the grading, that is after some time this plant may die, that is a dead plant matter. So again, it is decomposed by microorganisms like that. So it will relate it. So this is the Y-shaped model. So we already discussed that is an ecosystem. It is a functional unit with energy flowing among its abiotic components very efficiently. So energy flow in an ecosystem, it is always unidirectional. So energy in an ecosystem is never destroyed, but it is converted from one form to another. And only 10% of energy is passed to the successive trophic levels. So sun is the ultimate source of energy. So plants play a vital role in converting the solar energy to the chemical energy and making the sun's energy available to the organisms at higher trophic levels. So if any of the link in the food chain or food web is removed, efficient energy flow will not occur. So because these food chains, they are interconnected. Food webs are interconnected. So this is about the energy flow in an ecosystem and energy flow in an ecosystem. Any doubts?
Ma'am.
Okay.
Regarding of today's class, have you any doubt, my dear friends?
Sir, I have doubts, sir.
Okay. Madam is here. Please ask, Naina.
Sir, okay, sir.
Adugu.
Ma'am,
Okay, tell me.
ma'am said that producers, consumers, and decomposers, no, ma'am.
Okay. Mm.
Consumers and decomposers, what will happen, ma'am?
Tell me again.
Con-
Naina.
sir.
Okay, you can ask clarity. What you have any doubt regarding of this class? Ask clearly.
Okay, sir.
Consumers and deconsumers. Difference. You
Decom-
asked about the difference between consumers and decomposers.
Yes, sir.
Madam.
Difference between consumers and decomposers.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, consumers means they eat the producers. Okay, they dependent on the producers for their energy, whereas the decomposers mainly they get energy from the dead organic matter, so they are called as the decomposers. Okay, consumers mean they depend on the living organisms also, so they get food from the plants, so plants are the living organisms. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Clear?
Okay, sir. Clear, sir.
And decomposers also useful for the recycling of the biogeochemical cycles, continuation of the biogeochemical cycles. It applies, it improve the soil fertility also. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Right, madam. Thank you very much. Your wonderful session and beautiful slides. Nice presentation, madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.